Recording with Mr. Jeffrey Prather on Friday, April 14th, 2023 at 5:14 p.m. Eastern Time. Guys, if you want to support the show, you're watching on Rumble, click that little red button. That's locals. Or you can go to the description, buy the merch. Those are all my own graphic designs. Support the podcast in any way you can. But today we're talking about your book, Chase. It's right over your shoulder, and it will also be in the description about you tied just about everything together. You tied my love of skyscrapers, the Burj Khalifa. You tied together nuclear weapons. You tied together Black Ops. You tied together Border Patrol. You tied together and then Secret Service and the how'd you describe it? The interlocking rings going into motion, and then the idea of concrete versus go out and be bombed in the open. And then there really was a poetic, now it's my turn, and the bloody stumps. And then finally ends, he didn't really elaborate on it. What I imagine seems to be some sort of initiation into a super soldier program. But so I don't completely spoil it, again, the book is in the description, guys. I highly recommend it. Mr. Prather, could you maybe talk about it a little bit, or at least what drove you to write it?
Well, it's kind of, the main character is thinly veiled, and it's a lot based on my experiences.
Yeah.
And with my books, I always tell a story that's fun, but at the end of every chapter, I say, but here's how it could be real. That's why there's the news articles backing up everything that the book's about. Originally, back when I was making movies, and I've made movies with Chris, what's his name, the Ranger, Chris Christopherson. I've done fight scenes with him back in the day. He was an Army Ranger, in case you don't know, a helicopter pilot. Great guy. And Wes Studi is the Vietnam veteran friend of mine that is the first Native Academy Award winner. And he's been in everything. Magua, he's fabulous. And originally, I wrote this in mind. I was going to have him play John Horse, and he knows Val Kilmer. So Val Kilmer called me up before Val got his throat and everything. And this was really a script back when I was still doing movies. It started to get going and then fell apart. I wrote it for Arizona, but the film industry in Arizona is now dead. So it would have been in New Mexico. But it was also very patriotic, and it was about the Muslim threat. The ending, of course, is, a very 300 Thermopylae-like sacrifice there, the analogy. But it just never happened. So I turned it into a book. And I think it, reads well and flows well. And there's a lot of, really it's a lot of my life in there. It's not me having sex on the assistant United States attorney's desk, by the way. It's an attorney I knew who told me that. I've worked with a lot of them on that. But the OPR guy is very much the guy who came after me in DEA. That's right down to the way he dressed and everything. So it was a modern Western, which would have been a great, No Country for Old Men meets Die Hard was the log line, but you can't make films like that now. That the industry has turned away. It's starting to change with, Chris Pine's The Contractor, about biowarfare with SF scuba guy, very realistic, and of course Yellowstone, just a modern Western. It's starting to change, but at the time it wasn't allowed to happen. But a lot of that is really a thinly veiled my story. I was never in Delta. I'll say that right now, and I never ran a team. I'm Q qualified, but I was a military branch guy, and that the year that came out, the MI branch wouldn't let me go because that's hard to get TSs. I went to schools like SOT school and stuff like that, and I commanded a PSYOP operational detachment, but I was never on an ODA. Always try and make that clear.
Yeah. And then you actually describe the selection part the same way Dale does, and Dale went through the same thing. No, but really I was listening to it and I was like, that's exactly, you never know when that's the whole thing is like, half of the head fuck is you don't know where the finish line is. And it's just, can you keep going? You might have a week left. You might have 30 seconds
Yeah.
left.
No, well, and that's what we were talking about. There's other units that I have been in, and the selection process is even more unknown. In fact, they'll say you didn't make it, and you leave, and then later on you are approached, and because they want to see how you walk away
How you
too.
react.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hardcore. That's bad.
Well, but that's really part of the intelligence community because nobody who goes to CIA headquarters gets recruited as a knock because everybody's watching there. The real recruitments are in hotels and offsite, not an official cover. The official cover guys are the State Department. They have the regular passports, and how you know is that they are foreign service specialists as opposed to foreign service officers, because the Foggy Bottom guys want to guard their FSO stuff. And I know that because I was a DAO, as a defense attaché officer, just like we're seeing right now. It's just broke with this poor E1 Air Force kid got arrested at gunpoint by the absurdly armed FBI HRT, who should be ashamed of yourselves. If for any of you 1811 HRT FBI guys listening, you should be ashamed of yourself, and you should be turned into a whistleblower and stand up and be a real warrior.
They rolled in at MRAPs and helicopters. That dude was sitting on his porch.
Yeah, I mean, but there's more to that story. But sure. Chase show right after Soviet Union fell, they were selling nuclear devices, and a SATM, their SATM, and that's small atomic demolition munition. I knew SF guys. You probably have interviewed the guys in East Germany who, that kind of goes to the Bridge of Spies thing, is they put on the backpack on the DIP mission, the die in place mission for the dam or whatever, because they're like, E&E out of there, but you're not going to be able to get far enough away from that to that for that to happen. But I would have liked to have seen it been made. Been a cool film. Val in his day. I like him, and Wes, of course, is a friend. Would have been real impressive.
I don't think you should give up hope. I think we're due for a whiplash in the opposite direction. It just all of you, and that's not even just like an opinion or a want. That just seems to be an objective observation of the last 50 to 80 years. Is just the cultural thing just swings back and forth. And right now we are in the whole chop your genitals off, shave your head, dye your whatever's left blue, and say I'm a witch. Like, that's only gonna last for so long. It's gonna go back in the opposite direction. And then that, I think, would be the fertile ground for your movie.
Well, not in Hollywood, but maybe. I tried out for Mel Gibson's We Were Soldiers Once, which is a fabulous book. I'm sure you've read that one and seen that film. And actually, my friend Tim Abel, I don't know if you've interviewed him, but no. he's had the Veterans Hunter show forever. He got the part. He was Ranger, and he was Old Guard as well. But I mean, that was a great representation of a great book. But all of my peerage now say that they're not going to fight for the Skittles flag, and their kids weren't fighting for the Skittles flag. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't expect there to be any fair elections. There's no 2024 revenge tour. We've got to build the resistance. But we want to talk about Chase. So
yeah, as we go down that rabbit hole. So about Chase, though, so obviously I do love skyscrapers, Burj Khalifa, but that entire idea of why haven't we seen something like that? Or has that happened, and has the threat been negated in terms of getting a Saddam into the United States? Like, you feel like that would be goal one, is to get something that tiny and just cause terror. Why haven't we seen that?
Well, I believe there has been, from Rumant, there has been Soviet-style SATMs come back in. There's been all kinds of different earthquakes at different places at different times. You know, for example, Sicario. I didn't really like the first Sicario, but the second Sicario, I lived a lot of that. I did tunnel operations, cross border tunnel operations. I went south with the Federales, the Feos, and saw a lot of that. The second Sicario, Day of the Soldado, I think it was very, very realistic. But again, and the CIA guys coming in, and we're gonna, of course, that's what happened with when I found out that there was a CIA agent there when they were torturing Kiki to death. So that was another thing about Chase, is trying to actually tell that kind of story. And the real moral there is, it's not the organization that makes the difference. It's one real warrior who transcends him being in a suit, or wearing a green beret or anything. It's that he's going to do what's right alongside a native warrior, an Apache warrior. And that's the thing about my other book, Initiation, is General Crook. Of course, I trained under, I have some tribal heritage. My mom's from Comanche, Oklahoma. I was adopted. I ended up training under, that's the story of Initiation. But of all the native warriors, the Apaches, everybody knew the Apache. Everybody knows who Cochise is and Geronimo. Wes made a decade ago, was still making, Geronimo films. This is the first non-Western generation to grow up and not really admire those they have vanquished. And General Crook called them the Tigers of the Southwest. But their most important ceremony was when a little girl has her first moon and becomes a woman. And in Inde, in Apache, she becomes Islan de Leje, which is white painted lady. And they spend an inordinate amount of money and time and effort to bless that time. And that's something that we're losing now. And that's what I try to capture in Chase's relationship with his daughter, which is kind of like my relationship with my first daughter, who's happily married to an MMA guy who's a great guy and tatted up and, takes good care of her, but, doesn't talk to me anymore. But, the story, the special agents, the SF guys, they're all divorced. I say, based on my special operations and special agent and intelligence career, I should be divorced three times by now, and working on 4 or 5. And I'm sure you guys know, I know a lot of guys like that. But I've
interviewed a lot of them. I've interviewed a lot of them. Yeah. Yeah. No,
that was the other thing, is when he's trying to relate with his daughter, and then he relates with the illegal as well. That's showing the importance of being a warrior protector. That sometimes you have to take life to save life.
I think you also do a good job illuminating it's not just Hollywood evil, that there are evil people in the world. There are religious fanatics who truly believe it is their destiny, it is their duty to vaporize the great Satan. Like, this isn't some mercenary that just really wants the paycheck. They are like you said, I started with puppies. I started with chickens. Like, there are people whose whole life is put towards this. And we refuse to believe that, generally, not everyone, because it doesn't fit our worldview. It's xenophobic. It's hateful. No, we live in
when you see, you're talking about the final scene where it goes, hey, I started with puppies, killing puppies, and I got no problem slitting kids. And so for some of us who have seen that stuff, and we'd rather unsee it and don't want to see any more of it, but we know it. And almost no film, there are very few films dragged across concrete with Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn, besides being hilarious, if you want to see real violence, and Vaughn in Brawl and Cell Block 44. There's some real violence, in there. But normally nobody shows real violence. It's funny, to this generation wants to pretend to be tough and scary with their little movies, because they don't know real violence, and they think that the Blantifa, violence is fun. Violence is fun so far for you because you've only been on the given end, but real violence is terrifying to experience. And that's something you got to work through too, to get past. And that was part of the big final fight, was not just, the helicopter, but it was also the psyop ahead of the fight, because there's always the psyop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's another aspect that I really wanted to show in there. Because I'm always, my wife had a real hard time understanding this, because I'm always like ready to go. I'm like, let's go. Because after conflict comes resolution.
Yeah.
But most people never want resolution. That's what we are kind of talking about before the show. But before you can get to resolution, you've got to have I think, Fury, I have some tanker friends, and they say Fury was real good. And there's a great thing in there where Brad Pitt says, I
Before
started
this is
killing
over, a lot of people have to die.
I started killing Nazis in Africa. Now I'm killing Nazis in Germany. This will end, but first I got to kill some more Nazis.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and that's biblical too, and sometimes that's the way it's got to go. Before there is resolution, there's got to be conflict, and you've got to welcome that conflict. And the guys that you hang out with and interview are the guys that welcome that conflict. But right now, the conflict is psyop. The terrorists never succeeded. The whole 9/11 thing. This was kind of a play on that, and that it did not. And this is another point about that is of course we've seen now the CIA and the Mossad behind 9/11. I still believe planes flew into buildings, but I know I have peerage that have told me about the Israeli art students and the Mossad connections. Serious guys that I worked with that are not,
not kooks.
And I didn't know about that, but I do now. And of course, Building 7 and everything. But that became an inflection point. And the point with the SATM that they were bringing in was that it wasn't much of an inflection point. And that's what's going on now is the war is going on. The killings, the kinetic war is raging around us, but they're not in uniform, and it's not being read as warfare. But people are dying and dying horribly, just like the 20,000 cows just roasted alive, because pretty soon it's going to be 20,000 folks roasted alive. It'll be like that, and they'll sell it like something else. And so that was kind of the build that I was also trying to get across in Chase.
The psyop part, and then the conflict brings resolution. And obviously I never served, but so my layman version is, it's like when you really gotta throw up and you just keep ignoring it, and you're laying on the couch going, no, I don't want to throw up. Anyone that's had that anyone that's been hungover before knows, dude, just get up and go throw up. Like, it's not going away. You can stay here for hours feeling clammy and no, dude, just go yak. It's gonna be like 30 seconds of hell, and then what's that feeling after you throw up? Oh, you just now you feel like shit, and you're kind of gross, and you need to like clean the toilet and maybe take a shower. But like through that conflict does come peaceful resolution, and sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes it takes a much longer time. Ending a relationship or getting off drugs or losing weight. There's conflict, but through that comes resolution. And the more you go through that, the more confident you are going into conflict, because you know it's coming. I've been to the gym. I don't know how many thousands of times I've gone to the gym, but I go in without even thinking, because I know I'm going to feel better after it. Today was no different. I've been going to the gym since 2002. Walked into the gym today, tired, groggy, but I go right through it and I push hard, because the harder I push, I know in 20 minutes I'm going to feel so good. And to people that have never done that, it can be terrifying. Now, granted, again, I've never served. I don't know violence. I don't know real violence. But I think that's why individuals like you or the Delta Force guys or the SF guys, you talk to them and they're, they've all moved out of cities. They're all out in the mountains. They're all collecting, grain and firewood and ammo. But you look at them and they're calm as cucumbers, and they tell you, they go, we're going to win. It's just going to be really bad for a while. But they go, we're not going to lose. They go, it's just going to be bad. And then you have people like me who I'm like, I've never seen any of this, and it's slow motion watching a Marxist takeover of the country. You're like, this is horrible, and it's, how are we going to resist this? And you're right, there's not going to be an election that gets you out of it. That ship sailed. But the people who have seen this before know it's coming. They're not thrilled about it either, but they're also confident in their ability to work through conflict and get to that point of resolution where you wipe your mouth and you go, I'm not nauseous anymore. I feel so much better. They know that. You know that. I know it in theory. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at is there's no avoiding it. And I don't know, maybe without even knowing it, maybe I'm becoming an accelerationist, but it's like, let's just get it done. I don't know. I don't really know if there's a question in there, but back to you, Mr. Prather.
Well, what I say is we're in the build the resistance phase, and the tyranny running our government is in the round up the resistance phase.
Yeah.
But the resistance will build regardless. So the young Massachusetts E1 National Guard guy, he's kind of like Kyle Rittenhouse, Elijah Dickens, Nick Sandman, and there's going to be more of those coming. And the young FBI guy, who I forget his name, who didn't want to arrest people with long gun at gunpoint, like this isn't the way we're doing this. And then the other guys are jabbed. They're attriting their forces nicely for us along the way. And all the SF guys and some of the MARSOC guys, because the MARSOC stuff is very similar to SF stuff, of UW stuff or FID stuff. We're kind of in a foreign internal development, unconventional warfare, Marine Corps Special Operations, Raiders, whatever they're calling themselves this week. But the resistance is building across the whole base of the country. And that's what I'm always saying, Team America at JeffreyPrather.com is resistance, not militia. It's just like the French resistance everywhere. And eventually they're going to make Geronimo. So Geronimo was not born, kind of going to my other book now, Initiation, but his original Indian name was Goklia or Goyatle, which means yawner, which means the kid who can't stay awake. He's yawning, not listening to his elders at the fire. He wasn't a firebrand or anything. But the Mexicans first killed his first wife and kids, and the Americans killed his second wife and kids. And he's like, all right, I'm all in now. That hasn't happened yet in America. And that's kind of what happens in Chase there. He just wants to, bide out his government time and retire. And he's not allowed to do that. And again, it's not any of the feds that come to the rescue. It's just like 9/11. There's no, air marshal or anything. It is proven warriors who are out in the country who are all of a sudden, standing up and stepping in and got nothing else to lose. That's the more sophisticated enemy understand this. The less sophisticated, like when you're going to run. So I've arrested, my biggest cocaine haul was 2,000 pounds of cocaine. But when they're going to run cocaine, they say, okay, give me photos of your family, give me your address. And, that's all the kidnap. That's why Phoenix is next to Mexico City, the kidnapping capital of the world, because it's all going up through Mexico. But they haven't really thought this through because they're not really dealing with those kind of people most of the time. So Geronimo was a fabulous hunter. He was the best hunter in his band, the Bedonkohe Inde. He got a deer. He got 2 deer with 1 arrow. There were guys. If you know tribal history like I do, there were guys who dropped 2 buffalo with 1 arrow. It's not a competition. It's, hey, look how efficiently I can feed my family and the tribe. But that skill set, then, if you got no family left to feed, that skill set turns in, okay, now I got nothing left to lose. And that becomes a very dangerous person if they are skilled.
Yeah. It almost seems like there's nothing new under the sun. We're just replaying these old ancient cycles of archetypes and dramas and, Joseph Campbell, hero's journey, and it will play out in different ways, either chariots and pharaohs or F-22 Raptors and Satums and whatever's after this and AI and generation ships and nanobots. And it seems to be the same cycles and the same stories just playing out in different ways. And if viewed from that angle, there's an awareness that there is no winning in a final sense. It's you win for now, but it will arise again. And if it's not your kids, it'll be your kids' kids. And if it's not them, it'll be their kids. That this never really goes away. You don't go to the gym the final time and then go, I did it. I'm fine. I got the biceps. No, you understand that this is just what you do now. You do this till you die. Do you find any of that to be true, either in Chase or in your own belief system, that it's just what you do and that there's a higher order to this? This is a test by God over the millennia. There will always be evil. We're never just going to stomp out evil and say, we did it, guys. Like it won't work that way. There will always be bad. There will always be betrayal. There will always be traitors. There will always be unpredicted heroes. The guys in Flight 93, let's roll. The guys that just, do the right thing regardless. The feds are never going to come save you. The power will always become too consolidated and then it start attacking its own people. It just rhymes for all of eternity. And I don't think that that's a negative way to look at it. A negative way would say this is a form of reincarnation in which we are eternally stuck in hell. I don't think that's it. I think it's that the lessons will unfold until the wisdom is acquired. The beatings will continue until morale improves. Is there any accuracy into that, do you think?
Well, I would look at it a bit differently than
Okay.
that.
All right.
First of all, we're created by the creator. So human nature hasn't changed since the beginning. Nothing has changed. They're trying to say it changed, and they're also now trying to change it with the genetic modifications. And that's where the Antichrist, the adversary, comes into it. So again, I am a Christian chaplain. I founded Christ Connection Chaplaincy. I follow biblical history. If you really want to understand history and human nature, read scripture and read history. But you got to read between the lines, and you also got to read, because like the garden, let's talk about the garden.
Sure.
The conventional Christians say it's Eve's fault. She eats from the apple. My thing is, it's the Nahash, which is the sizzling one, an energy current in the electronic branches tree, psyops Eve, and you have to read between the lines. But where's Adam? Well, Adam is probably standing there doing nothing. Well, what do we see today? The generational curse we see among men. We see men very passive, not leading and protecting their families, their wives, and their children. And so that's my take on that. Fast forward to New Testament is we're heading into Revelation now, because it couldn't happen until after World War II. Because if you study scripture, as I do, what everybody prophesizes is the state of Israel must be created in a day. And boom, right after World War II, the state of Israel is created in a day. So now things start moving towards an end point. Human nature hasn't changed. There's always going to be bad guys. Nothing. That's why good stories like Chase always have the same plot, and all the stuff that they try and do fails because it's not true. It's to our nature. They just try and modify it. But no, it's going to an end point, and that's something that people need to be prepared for, because things are going to get real bad. Christians call it the tribulation. I just did a special called "Calculating the Coming Collapse" of how to prepare for that. And I was on a private cast, and I was taking a lot of questions, and people were asking me, well, should I do this or should I do that? I'm like, you're asking the wrong questions. The right question is, how do I serve and share with everyone else around me? So to put that in terms probably would make more sense to you is, it's not about First Blood. It's about Magnificent Seven or the Seven Samurai. And of course, the Seven Samurai, Shichino Samurai, is the basis. Akira Kurosawa's classic film is the basis for the Magnificent Seven. That's really a special forces A team that goes into a Mexican Indian village for almost nothing. Why? Because they have sinned. They're fallen folks like Chase, and they say, hey, this is everything we've got. It's it's almost nothing. And the gunfighter goes, I've been offered a lot for my work, but never everything. I'll take the job. And then later on, when one of the gunfighter dies, he goes, I'll be damned. And you got to listen closely and watch it like 75 times like I have. But Yul Brynner goes, maybe not. Maybe you have redeemed yourself, through this sacrifice. So as warriors, there's an old Special Forces poster. I think it's even in the book. Oh, no, that's the bumper sticker that boycott Jane Fonda, American Trader Bish. No, it's the Special Forces goes in longer, stays in deeper, and carries
a bigger load.
I'm talking about a rucksack. What are you thinking about?
Yeah.
But there's an old poster that says, people join us not because we're special, but because they are. And that's really,
okay.
If you look at all the selection processes, you cannot quantify that. You can't AI that. And that's what all the selection processes are for. And even then, it doesn't really work out until you are in zero-sum confrontation crisis combat. And even then, some people rise to that occasion and find things that no one expected in them. And so that's very, very important to understand that and plug that in. But if you take it away from scripture, if you look at I can't think of the British author right now, but he goes the fate of empires, and he lists all these empires, and empires last about 250 to
years.
275 years. And he goes, and then they start to fall apart from within, and we are right at that point.
Right on time.
And I think you're making a lot of analogies to the Romans, the Roman Republic, the fallen Roman Republic, what I call the fallen American Republic. Roman soldiers were fabulous engineers, and soldiers and fighters, just like our military has been, is not now, unfortunately. But I think you can make a real strong analogy. So there's my analysis of study scripture and history, and you can really see, where we're heading. As an intelligence officer, the first thing I would do when I was the S2 for 2nd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group, we were going to go to a country. The first thing I pulled out was the CIA country study and read about the history of the country. You can see that in 12 Strong and Horse Soldiers, where the Mark Nooch gets up there, he's played by Thor, whatever, but the real guy, they know the history of what's going on. So they know that they couldn't stay, in there. They knew they couldn't win, and I think I showed you my cool bourbon by Sergeant Major Vince McKellar, who was on ODA 595 Horse Soldier bourbon. And you haven't interviewed him yet, have you?
No, he won't. You've put me in contact with him before. My charm's not working on it. My charm works on most people. I don't think he's interested. I gotta be honest. I don't think he's interested.
So everybody, those in the profession and a lot of people know that story. But one of the things, when he came on and sat down, and he sat down with Dahlstrom, he was right there with Dahlstrom at the beginning with Mark Nooch, the captain. And he said, one of the first things Dahlstrom said to us was, I'm so sorry our country was used for 9/11.
Okay.
And this is a badass, this guy's been fighting forever. He has killed guys, and the sincerity and authenticity that Vince displayed in describing that meeting between warriors was right there. The whole interview was worth it for me to see that empathy and that rapport build, and and now we're going to win this. And they did win it. What he says is there were 2 wars, and the Green Berets won the first war in weeks, and then big Army and big DOD came in, and the military industrial complex goes in. And not that anybody's service wasn't noble and honorable, sure, just like Vietnam, but the focus is gone. The mission creep is gone.
It's the mom and pop. It's the mom and pop. Badass burger joint, and it's great. And you can tell the love is in the every burger. And then someone comes in and they buy it out for $50 million and put a franchise in every city. And it's, I mean, doesn't necessarily mean it's evil, but it's inherently, empty. And you talk about that even in the book is yeah, right. The first guy's in the special activities division with duffel bags of cash, and then you bring in the special operators, and a couple hundred guys bring down the country, and then comes in the military industrial. We're gonna need 40,000 MRAPs, and wherever we need air conditioners, and then comes in the money making operation. That doesn't take away, like friends of mine, Don Workman, who's an artillery guy. That doesn't take away from their service. But like you said, it's the mission creep, it's the industrial complex, it's the corporate money grab part. And that's harder to get behind.
Yeah, and the way Chase unfolds with Gold, and actually Gold is my horse. Gold, I have Gold, and my daughter rides him now. He's just that great of a horse. There's kind of a David and Goliath thing where Goliath is a giant, and there's all kinds of armor, and people don't get this because they don't really, again, they don't delve deep enough. But people think that David, the young shepherd boy, drops Goliath with a hand sling. It's a shepherd sling. It's a staff with a sling on the end of it for long distances. It's like a trebuchet, a portable trebuchet to get the distance. And that's scripturally correct too, because you can see Goliath say, "Why are you approaching me with your staff in your hand?" And David says, "Hey, I've taken bears and lions, so I can take you too."
Yeah.
And low tech from a distance, and that is an important part of this, to show the low tech in Chase defeats, all the money, all the stuff coming out of the Burj. And it isn't, again, the organization, it's the warrior. And again, there is a little team there. There's John Horse, there's the illegal girl, and I tell that in a way of action that's cool, but there's a lot more to that, as always.
Well, and even on that tech side, right? It's a fight in the stands. It's not the F-22s screeching in overhead, right? Very symbolic, as I think we saw with the F-22 shooting down a spy balloon. Like it's very much so.
And they missed the first time.
Case in point, though, right? Case in point. It's a guy it was a guy who was told to give in his badge and gun, and you end up taking him down through just sheer will, adrenaline. And there's also, I want to touch on this theme before I forget it. And it's the border patrol agent disappears and the operator comes back. There's this sort of casting off the facade of, I'm playing this part and you're playing that part. And it's back to the raw, it's back to truth. I'm not chasing you on a highway and I'm an agent and I have rules of it comes back to just killer. Comes back to killer, and one of us is not going home. And when you forget the whole, I'm a soldier and I'm doing this, and it's now you're driving a Humvee shooting at it, like screaming, like you drop the entire facade of civility, and the warrior comes out again.
Yeah, the blood sacrifices of Muslim and Christian mixed together by an artificial wind in a modern Colosseum.
Yes.
Spurts from a headless corpse. I like that.
Oh, it's symbolic. It's poetic. No, everything about it's wonderful. It is. Yeah, that's such a great line. Yeah. And then the president being hauled off, and it is poetic.
I would love to see it made, but I have not. I gave up on that effort a long time ago. I don't do, any movies or Hollywood anymore. I mean, the last one I did was with Wes and Dave Carradine. Um, a nice little Western, but hopefully that stuff will come back. Uh, but the devolvement there, now we are way even past there because it's not really Muslim terrorists. Actually, we're going to get some allies like in Michigan who don't want trannies. They're okay with pedophilia, but not trannies, and that's something of an ally. I don't know if you've ever talked to some of the SF guys who saw pedophilia over there
Oh yeah.
and stopped because that's a story you don't hear on the mainstream news, but it happened. But the devolvement, all eventually, it always goes back to hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
My combatives DVD sold in Army Air Force exchange stores for years because it all eventually, no matter what the weaponry is, it breaks, it runs out, and as society collapses and breaks down, it's going to be more and more of that, and it will get medieval, and so it'll be back to guys that can function in a medieval environment.
Yeah, no, the entire thing is poetic of the casting aside of formality, of language, of laws, of clothes. It does come down to just my appendages versus yours. And one of us, it's two brains operating two meat sheathed skeletons, and one of us is physically going to survive, even if it just means for a minute longer than the other.
You see that in the movies, but that actually happened to me when the DEA went after me as the firearm. I was the only firearms instructor in Tucson, Yuma, Sierra Vista, and Mazatlan. So I was the firearms guy for a couple of hundred agents and probably 1,000 task force officers. And they said, hey, we want your badge and gun. That actually happened, and that was having had a badge and gun for 19 years, that was difficult to let go of. But once I let go of that, that was also really good too, because it didn't change me as a warrior. A warrior is not a blue suit. A warrior is not a green beret. A warrior is a warrior, and you got to define yourself as a protector of the innocence of children and women. And if you can get paid for it, great.
Yeah.
But if you can't, you still got to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the chase story, which is, my thinly veiled story.
Yeah, and when the infrastructure collapses and the grid goes down, I imagine I will band on to guys like you or Dale, and you guys will welcome me into your warrior group, and I'll be the entertainer. I won't have a microphone, I won't have studio lights, but we'll light a fire, and you guys will say, "Tommy, tell us a tale," and I'll fucking sit up there and I'll interview y'all about your days and make you laugh, and it'll just
that's the court jester role.
I am, and I take it. I understand what I mean. I have no illusions about what I am. I got the gift of gab. I'm Irish and I don't shut up and I'm curious. Yeah, we'll be sitting on, the heap of a skyscraper in an overturned tractor trailer, and you guys will all be exhausted from, I don't know, killing like roaming mobs like tranny Marxists all day, and you'll be like, there'll be no TV, but you'll light a fire, and I'll make a little megaphone out of a magazine. You guys will be like, "Tommy, tell us a story," and I'll be like, "All right," and I know what I am. I've got, and I've got value in that. And I think I've made enough of enough of friends in special forces that they'll maybe come exfil me. Or I won't, or I'll just be eaten alive by a bunch of trannies. I don't know. It's one or the other. But I accept my path. God's put me here for whatever reason. I haven't figured it out. But enough of me talking about cannibalistic trannies. I'm trying to keep a straight face. There is that thing though, and I want to maybe mention that is right in the final moments of the fight. And you describe adrenaline dump very well. Not that I've ever had one, but in the way the other guys I've interviewed have talked about adrenaline dumping, and right, the last glucose, the last lactic acid to the point where the very blood is coming out. There is a physical point, right? We are ultimately machines. There is a point where it doesn't matter how much farther your mind goes. Your mind can go over the matter. if you're out of glucose and you're out of the H2O and you're out of the, out of the salts, your body is going to break down. It doesn't matter how strong your mind is. After all the adrenaline dumps and all the fighting, the machine will break. You can have all the grit in the world. If the car goes out of gas, it's just out. And it's you recede into the mind, and it's the bruises who did this to you, and it's like, no, this was cheerleading. It was my turn. And you talk about that, and it's less of an adrenaline dump and more of a surrender to what you are here for, what your entire existence has led up to this point, is it's my turn. Could you maybe touch on that and how that plays into where we are now? It's
Yeah,
our turn.
that's a great wrap. So of course you know all about that. I know Colonel Grossman. I've been to his things as law enforcement and as military, and I've actually done stuff with him. I've interviewed him. He lays all that really out real well. I always say when I'm training, you don't have to go fast, go slow, because the synaptic startle response will make you fast. The adrenaline dump will make you strong. So train slowly and carefully. And all that happens. But I would disagree that we are just machines. We are more than that. We have the spark of God, the soul of God in us. And we can go beyond. And so when you get into the tier one guys that you interview all the time, they are taken beyond that point. And if you can access that, and there's a guy who wrote a book called Becoming Supernatural that talks about extreme athletes that go beyond those points, and something happens, and they hear the voice. So I've heard the voice. Scripture talks about the voice, and so you can still complete what you got to do beyond the time where you could do it.
Okay.
That is the difference. Yeah, you're going to be done after that.
Yeah.
But you can do more than you think you had to do. I'm trying to think of the widow of one of it was either Shugart or Gordon's widow from Gothic Serpent came up to the TF-160 guy,
Mike Durant,
that they rescued. Durant, yeah. And at some event, and she goes, "I'm glad that you lived because my husband completed his mission."
Well, and
how do you answer?
Well, and she said, because of you, I know what happened. I have closure.
Yeah, you are the witness there for that. So, so you can go beyond, and I think the best illustration of that may be the best illustration of everything I'm talking about may be Desmond Doss, who Yeshua was not nonviolent. He was crucified for political speech and violence with a weapon. But the fight was not physical, but he decided to act like an early Christian who were all nonviolent and go into violence and say, I'm going to win this anyway, and did, but by surrendering, by becoming, I don't know, I know I couldn't, and I doubt if you know any of the guys you've interviewed that could do what he did. So he puts the number, I think the citation is at 75. He said 50. His commander said 100. He doesn't know how many guys he dragged after fighting a full battle out of, but I don't know any guys that could do that. But because that was, because he was beyond himself, and that's where it's not, Lone Survivor. It's not First Blood, it's Magnificent Seven, but it's even hooking in even onto a bigger level, into a bigger group, and into real power, which power comes from God, and that goes back to where Yeshua is walking along, and the centurion says, "Hey, will you heal my servant?" He goes, "Yeah, I'll come to your house." He goes, "No, I'm a man of authority. When I say to a soldier, do something, it is done. I don't have to go see. It is done. If you say it is done, it is done. It will be done." And Yeshua goes, "Wow, I've never seen." When I give veteran speeches, I like to say, "Hey, look, see, we are known for our faith, even though he was the enemy." But that requires to go even further than failure, which are typical. A lot of drills will take you to failure. I remember them running me into failure at Benning, just to do it, just to see if you'll go to failure.
Just to break you.
And then, yeah, well, it's not,
It's just, no, it's just to see it. It's, will you go?
Then they put you in the poncho and then they're carrying you,
Yeah.
and they're failing. And then, but there's so something I say all the time on my podcast is, elite soldiering is mind over matter. And I think I've heard Dale say that too. I don't really follow his stuff, but I think I've heard him talk about the guy who broke his both legs at
selection.
But real warriorship is all heart. That is, it goes beyond anything that is even mind, and that it is, becomes an instrument of God, and the Lord is a man of war, and that becomes a terrible and beautiful thing. And that's the real difference, and that's really why we will win in the end, is because they will have made us unstoppable.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to maybe correct myself. I didn't mean to say about us being machines. I didn't mean that in the commie atheist of we're nothing but chemicals. And no, fuck that. No, we are the perfect creation of God. I was looking at it from a biology major, and I was just thinking like, yeah, at a certain point, the glucose runs out and the blood runs out. But no, I mean, Dale does say that about, he's like, you can be the toughest guy in the world. And he's like, if you haven't found a place in your mind that is beyond this creation, you won't succeed. And that's what they're looking for, is they're finding that person who they won't fail, because it is not even in the field of potentiality for them. It's not some cheesy.
That's a real good point. So when I'm teaching advanced shooting courses and hostage rescue, there's a phenomena that happened. I don't know if any of your guys have talked about this, but there's a phenomenon when you're taking a hostage rescue shot, and I went to the schools where we sat in the rooms and the targets are behind us, is you don't see the hostage anymore. Because in marksmanship, it goes threat, front sight, rear sight, front sight, everything peripheral blur, trigger press. And so if you aren't focused, then you could hit the hostage. But if you talk, I don't know if you've talked to any of your guys that you interviewed, Dale or anybody, but at advanced levels, the hostage is not visible anymore. So you can't hit them because you are so focused on that. That's a phenomena that I've seen in a lot of my students, my advanced students, and I've sat in the rooms for them. When they've reached a certain level of shooting, it's a pretty high level of shooting skill to be that confident. But that I'm sure about kill houses and shoot houses. That's what really separates an HRT from a SWAT team.
Yeah,
is they'll run those kind of drills regularly, and then the Spetsnaz guys actually get shot in their plates and take it even further. But that's a real important point there, I think, to mention.
Dale talks about it in a form. It's almost like a Jedi type, and Dale would never say that because Dale would be disgusted to quote modern like culture, like Marvel, Star Wars shit. But like, it is almost, it's not that I can't fail and I won't let myself fail and failure's not an option. No, that word isn't there. There simply is the thing that is happening and nothing more. When I let go of this water bottle, no part of me is like, it's probably going to fall. Floating is not an option. No, you just look at it and you don't even think it's going to fall. You just know. That's what things do. That's what gravity is. There is no opinion. There's no political take on it. That's just what it is. And they do talk about that crystallization of, it's not that I won't fail. It's simply that this is what's happening. It's predetermined. It's already done. We're just watching it play out. And you can't crack that mind because there is no off ramp. There's no percentage of failure. It simply is, this will be. And it's non-negotiable.
Yeah, that's what the native hunters, when they would, if you go in a gift shop, you'll see the deer or the buffalo with the arrow head going to the heart or with the arrow tied to it. And what that was they were making that as they were thinking about the hunt. And they always went out hungry and then the game was called to them. Um, it's a whole different way of approaching things. And now that's called visualization and everything, but really it's the same. Nothing's really changed. In elite warriorship, nothing has changed. It really is the tools, the accoutrements have changed,
Sure.
but elite warriorship has not changed. It begins in Judges with Samuel, of bringing the water up to the mouth as opposed to lowering, and you got too many guys. I want to cut your guys down again. That's it's scriptural, and if you read those lessons and figure that stuff out, then you crack the code. The trick is, of course, then living it and doing it.
And I think, and maybe we'll wrap up with this, is when Chase realizes it's his turn, there's also another moment of not only is there no failure, but like, I'm probably not going to survive this. And that also is not a problem. It's just, I have reached my point. This is my purpose. Like, if a bomb was conscious, if a JDAM was conscious, and it's coming in on its target. Oh, here I go. Here I go. No, it is laser focused. And it's not worried that it's about to be obliterated, because it's not obliterating. It is fulfilling its purpose. And I think that is an internal level of peace that you can only find through God. It is something far larger than you, where it's just, this is what is happening. This is what I am. This is what I was meant to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. And
that's the interesting thing about the epilogue too, is he's offered this cybernetic, and so the question is, today, would he take it or not take it?
So that's what I was going to ask. Where does that go? Or is it supposed to be open-ended?
So there you got to look at Chase of today. If he was in, this book was written, quite a while back, but would he want to work for the government and have part of him injected at this point today or not?
I don't know. You ask Dale right now, I think Dale would tell you no. And that's hardcore to hear that from Dale. But I guess that's more of a philosophical question then. I hadn't thought about it that way. Are you willing to do this? And I think a lot of these guys would say no, because this isn't what they thought it was, or it's not what it used to be.
No, that's very true. And so, the tranny military likes to kill, but they're afraid to die. There's a big difference between, the old veterans and what they're going to come against. So, I mean, as this continues to be crucibled, we're going to see that even more. And that's, again, why we will win.
We will win. It's just going to be it's going to be bad in the interim. But, from my own, no combat, no service history, but rather my own, I guess, service in my podcast realm, is I always know that eventually I will win, even if it's me versus Google, because fundamentally they cancel and I create. You can only cancel so much. You can get rid of everything I have. I'll create more. There's a limited amount of things you can cancel before you're out of it. They destroy, I produce. I will always win this. What is cancer? Cancer is infinite growth on a finite amount of resources, which is why it kills the host. That's what they are. You can only cancel everything. You can only kill people who aren't left enough until you're done with everyone. It is a death cult. It will cancel itself. That's why I know I'm gonna win. But Mr. Prather, with that was a great podcast. Thanks, man. Guys, go grab the book. Go into the description. The link is in the description. The link to your show, website, all that good stuff is in the description. You can check out episodes that we've done in the past. I know that your show is always doing well on Brighteon. Anything I haven't plugged? Oh, and initiation. And we need to do an episode on initiation.
Yeah, I would love to. That's a really important book. That's much more important book than Chase. Yeah, I'm on American Media, Periscope, Brighteon, and then Prather Point as well. So thanks for having me. Prayers to your family, especially your mom.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prather, and thank you for our talk before the podcast. I genuinely appreciate that. From the bottom of my heart, I love you, Mr. Prather. Thank you so much. Guys, God bless America. God wins. We're going to win. Thank you so much.